My dad tried to bring somebody into our home. Yeah, it's his mistress, and my mom was going to let it slide. But I wasn't going to let it slide, so I do something that is pretty stupid. Let me tell you exactly what I did. This is a story with a lot going on, so bear with me. I'm 17 years old, male, and promise it'll be worth the read. I'm in a deep situation with my biological father, Harry, and I've been wondering if I've done the right thing by recording the incident. I was so angry when I took the action I did it. Just to be honest, I did not really think about it and reacted on instinct. Well, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, right? So I should probably set the scene for you. I always had a flair for the dramatics, but I'll keep the facts within this. My relationship with my dad has never been great, and I think I was a bit of a disappointment to him, as I am not a quote man's man, and always preferred literature to the things he liked, such as hunting and fishing. That caused so many incidents over my younger years, and he would call me names and be rude about my interest. I was always closer to my mom, and if you ask me, she deserves a medal for putting up with my dad over the years. They were as different as two people could possibly be, and I've always wondered what drew them together in the first place. My mom, Laura, she said that she liked that my dad was the kind of man who would protect her and provide a good life for her. I've never asked my dad, but if I had to guess, I would say that he saw my mom as a gentle soul who would do as he told her to do. He's the type of man who wanted a traditional wife who stayed at home, cooked, and had his children. That's exactly what she did. And in return, he was rude, dismissive, and cruel. I had many memories of my father shouting at my mom because the food wasn't on the table when he got home from work, or that she, had not had time to do some housework because she's been busy with me and my younger sister. My dad would never have thought to do any housework himself because that was women's work. He would give me a hard time if I did chores around the house and say that my sister Lucy should be doing that and I should be learning how to be a man. If being a man meant growing up to be an awful human being, I was not interested. Anyways, that's a bit of a background on why Dad and I think it, to give you a basic understanding of the type of person that he is. To the outsider and his mates, he's a man's man. Somebody who's always there when they need him and always up for a beer or a trip hunting. To us, he was somebody to tiptoe around until you knew what kind of mood he would be in when he got home from work. So, about 3 months ago, my dad started to work a lot of overtime. He told us that there was a big order coming through as his company had managed to get a massive contract with the military to produce parts of their ships, so he would be working longer hours. But it would be worth it as there would be more overtime pay. Is it wrong to think that there was also the benefit that he would be at home less? Anyways, he was right. And he was working from early in the morning until on some days almost midnight. He would come home tired, grumpy, and expecting my mom to have waited up all night for him. I mean, come on. Well, it's just so he could have a hot home-cooked meal when he arrived at home. One night he was really late, and she gave up and went to bed. When my dad got home, he physically dragged her out of bed to make, some food. All of this is not really the reason I'm writing to you guys, though. Although you may find it hard to believe, it is the build-up to what happened that finally made me do something about things which resulted in the problem we have now. I have a feeling that I will look like a bad person at this point as I sat back and let my dad treat my mom like crap. And I would not dispute that at all. However, you need to understand that my dad is a big man, and I am not at all a fighter. So, now to the issue that's pushed our broken family relationship over the edge. The long hours that my dad was working turned into times when he would phone and say he was not coming home, so no one needed to wait up for him. He would say he was so busy that he decided to crash at work so he would get back into it as soon as he woke up. This started off as once, then twice, and then up to 4 nights a week. It did not make sense, as I think after the first couple of months of this, we all began to think he was not telling us the truth. The second thing that we noticed was that, despite the increasing number of hours that my dad was working, there was never any extra money for the household. When my mother finally asked my dad about it, as my sister needed money for a school trip, He went mad, yelling, screaming for over an hour before storming out of the house. We did not see him for 3 days, as he said that he would be staying at work where he was appreciated. Now, this is where I began to think that something was going on, and I wanted to know what it was, as my mom was making herself ill trying to keep everything going, never knowing when my dad would come home, and because my dad always just gave her money for household items and did not allow her to have her own account. She never knew when he would be home to give her money for food and things we needed. Some days, we have no food in the house, and luckily I have a part-time job, so I was able to help out a little. I'm still in school, so I don't earn very much at all. Things were very tense at home when my dad came home, and the incident that changed everything occurred. It was around 10 p.m., and I was in my room doing homework. My sister and my mom were in the kitchen chatting, and I heard my dad's car pull up in the drive. I knew that every time he came home there was a fight, and so I decided to go downstairs so I could be there for my mother if he was in a foul mood. What I did not expect when that door opened was for my father to walk in with another woman. I had no idea who this woman was, and I've never seen her before, and she was not one of the few friends that my mom had or one of the people saw when my dad paraded us to his work barbecues and parties to show that he had a perfect family. She was younger, much younger than he was, in her mid-20s, we found out later, and for a minute my mom, my sister, and I stood looking at each other and then back at my dad and the strange woman who had a pile of bags with her. My dad had this smirk upon his face that I will remember forever, and I knew at this point that something bad was about to happen. I'll type up the conversation as much as I can remember, but please bear in mind it was late and things got bad quickly, so it might not be exact word for word. My father started the conversation. What are you all doing, just standing there like idiots? What is this? What does it look like? This is Alicia. She's going to be a guest in our house. Well, we don't have a room for a guest. We'll make room. She'll be sleeping in our room. You can share with Lucy. There was stunned silence when we realized that my dad was trying to move his mistress into our family home. My mom's face drained of all its color and she lost her temper. Finally. She slammed her hands onto the table and yelled at my dad that enough was enough, and she was not having him move another woman into her bed and her home. Well, my dad seemed shocked to see my mom yell at him, and I could see the anger was building up in his face, and I'm not sure what made me start to record things that were happening, but I just had a feeling that it needed to be done. My dad starts yelling at my mom. He said that she would do as she was told, and that Alicia needed to come and stay here as her husband had worked out, and that she was having an affair, and that she needed somewhere to hide until it, quote, blew over. My mom said Alicia could hide out somewhere else, but she was not staying in our home. My father absolutely lost it. And he moved so fast and slapped my mom hard across the face, knocking her backwards into the fridge. And for a minute I was stunned, and then I heard my sister screaming and saw that my mom was bleeding from her nose. I don't know where I found the courage, but I handed the phone to my sister and shouted to keep recording as I faced up to my dad. He taunted me and told me I was not going to stop him, but I was so angry. And we got into a fight. He was right. I was no match for him. But it stopped him from attacking my mom as I stood there, and as we fought I heard my mom behind me phoning the police that, seemed to get through to my dad, and he grabbed Alicia's hand and left. We heard him start the car and leave in a hurry. The police arrived quickly and took one look at the damage to the house, and the blood upon my mom's face and the bruises on me where my dad had hit me as I blocked my mother, and said that they would arrest him. But my mom seemed reluctant to press charges and kept saying that she started the fight. Nothing I said could make her change her mind, and we were in shock. Nothing really made sense, and the police left, and it was only after that they left that I remembered we had been recording the incident. I should have just handed over the video to the police, but I've forgotten in the act, and it might have been good that I did not, as later that night I got some more footage. Once my sister helped my mom to bed, my dad came back and tried to get into the house. I was still downstairs as he tried to open the door, and I slammed it in his face, frantically pushing the locks as my dad kicked at the door. I realized he would soon give up and try another way in, so I ran around the house locking doors and windows, and my dad ran from the front door to the back and kicked and punched the wood. I had my phone out filming as I knew he would not give up. He carried on for about 3 hours, screaming, kicking the door as I hid, recording him frame by frame, and I think a neighbor must have called the police, as when my dad heard sirens, he ran away like a coward. And so the police missed arresting him and did not stay very long. I watched the video later and was surprised to see what felt like a short time had actually been hours. The arguments had lasted longer than I remembered, and all the time Alicia was smirking in the background of the recording, so now I need to decide. Do I send it to the police against my mom's wishes? It would ruin my dad's life, but at this point, I don't care. Top comments from the original post. Comment number 1. You need to get that video to the police now. Your dad does not deserve any sympathy at all, and your mom is showing to be a total victim mentality. She does not want to press charges because she's scared that she will make your dad even worse. But if you let him get away with what he has done, she will always be living in fear of him coming back and hurting her again. She might even take him back, and then there will be, well, what? How will you feel if she lets him come back and the next time he hurts her or your sister? Can you live with yourself if that happens? There's no excuse for what your father did, and you need to give the recording to the police now. Comment number 2. What's sending that video even going to prove, OP? That your mom picked a fight with your dad? I mean, maybe she should have kept her mouth shut, and he would not have hit her. You were recording it, so it is kind of your fault as well. I mean, if somebody was recording my private family matters, I would be mad as hell. It is not nobody's business what goes on inside your family. Maybe ask yourself why your dad needs to get himself another woman. Maybe if your mom was a better wife, yeah, and you were a better son, yeah, none of this would have happened. Update number 1. I'm shocked, truly shocked at some of the comments I received on my post that actually seem to think that my dad is the victim in this. What the hell kind of people are out there, and what are you smoking? I hope to God that you're trolling me, because if not, I worry about your families. So, I did not send the tape to the police that night. I was confused and sore, and my body hurt from the fight with my dad. In the end, I took some painkillers and fell asleep. I slept much deeper than I thought I would, and in the morning I was calm and able to think clear. I read through the comments on my post, which realized it was a bit all over as I wrote it clear in my head after my dad left. I woke up earlier than my mom and sister, as I think that they were up much later than I was, and I heard my mom crying for a long time. I was going to wait for my mom to get up and have a chat before I decided what to do, and I read a comment that said that my mom had a typical victim's mentality and wanted to let my dad get away with it rather than cause trouble, and I think deep down, maybe I do as well. Thankfully, it was the weekend, so we did not have to go to school, and I think I would have been really hard to explain why I look like I've been fighting, as I was not a kid who the teachers would expect to be in a fight. When my mom got up, we sat down and talked about exactly what happened, and the comments were right. My mom wanted no trouble, and she went as far as to say I should delete the video as there's nothing good that could come from causing more trouble. Then she said that my dad would come to his senses and come home and things would be fine. I don't think she was right, and in desperation I phoned my grandparents and told them what happened. They are my mom's parents, and we rarely see them as they do not like my dad. I did not date, ask any of my dad's relatives as they are the same kind of person. My grandfather was silent on the phone for a long time, and I thought that I've been cut off. He finally took a deep breath and told me to send the video and not tell my mom, just to do it. So, that's what I'm going to do. And I am doing the right thing, am I? I don't know, and I'm so confused by all the conflicting views on this. I'm only a 15-year-old kid. This is too much for me to deal with, and my grandparents are going to come. They live a long way away and need to get a plane. They can't be here for a few days. And in the meantime, I'm dealing with this on my own. Where can I get help from? I'm scared and alone. Update number 2. I did not say at the end of the last update, but I did send the recording to the police. The officer who came to the house left his card, and so when my mom was taking a shower, I went outside to the garden and called him. He gave me his email address and said to send it to him and he would take a look at it. And within 2 hours, everything became insane. And I'm not sure if I had done something that would ruin my relationship not only with my dad, which I don't care about, but also with my mother, as she's furious that I betrayed her and went behind her back. I can't believe that I'm bad guy in this situation. How the hell did that happen? The police arrived and asked us if we knew where my dad was, and I said that we had not heard from him, but he might have gone to his relatives or one of his friends, as they were also hiding from Alicia's husband. The police asked for the address of my dad's family and asked if, we knew who Alicia's husband was. We could not answer that, as we had never seen her before she turned up at the house. I gave them all the information that they asked for, and all the time my mom was crying and saying that I was making a big deal out of something that was not of importance. The police could see that I had cut on my face and that my mom had bruises from where my dad slapped her up, but she would not press charges no matter how I begged her to, or how nicely the police spoke to her and told her that they could make sure that she was safe. The meeting with the police ended with them saying that they would look for my dad, and based on the video, they would be arresting him for assault and on both me and my mom. Despite her protest, I felt relieved but also confused as to why my mom was so darn angry. Since the police left, I've been questioning myself and doubting myself. I love my mom very much, and I don't want her to be angry with me, but I have to do this. The police have not been able to find my dad yet, and I'm scared that he'll come back once he knows that I reported him to the police. It's almost worse than before I told them. About an hour after the police left, my phone calls from his side of the family started, calling me names and telling me that if I knew what was good for me, I would tell the police that I made up the whole thing. How could I do that when it's all on video? I'm getting grief from all sides, from my mom and from my dad's family, who are as scary as he is. Did I do the right thing? How do I get my mom to speak to me again? We've always been so close, keeping each other safe against my dad when needed, but now I don't know what to do. Update number 3. Guys, I really wish I could give you all a happy update, but they've been awful here. My dad and Alicia have been hiding for almost a week, and I suspect that they are being hidden by his family, or at least they're covering for it. The police also suspect that, but there's not much that we can do about it, ever since he left. My life has gone from bad to worse. My mom's still not speaking to me. She keeps telling me that this is all my fault, and if I would have just kept quiet, it would have blown over, just like it always does, and my dad would have gotten over his infatuation with that other woman and come home to his true family. I asked her over and over why would want to come back. He's been a terrible husband and father, and I'm grateful for all the replies to my last update, explaining to me that my mom is not to blame for how she's feeling, as many victims of domestic abuse see it as their own fault and don't want their abusers to leave. That speaks to me, as my mom would always tell my dad that she would do better every time she had an argument with him. My main worries is that my sister is seeing all this and she's taking my mom's side, saying she misses her dad, and it's my fault that he's not here anymore. I don't understand what I can do now. I've been reading your comments really carefully, and I found a couple that I think I might, use to help me. One commenter asked me if I had any family on my mom's side who would support me through this, as they would surely not support my dad, and that made me think a bit. My mom has become isolated over the years, as my dad did not let her have friends, and because her parents and her brother did not like my dad, she was also told to cut contact with him. As a result, I've never had my maternal grandparents or my uncle in my life. The comment said I should try to find them and ask for help, and that's been going around and around in my head for ages, and I finally decided that they were right. The problem was that my mom would never give their contact details, so I had to be sneaky, which made me feel bad, as it's something else that my mom could be angry with me about. So I waited until my mom was in the bath, and I went into her room and went through her cupboards and drawers looking for anything with their address or phone number, and I found it in the back of the wardrobe. I was so excited as I thought finally I would be getting some help, but it did not go well as I hoped for 2 reasons. I'm getting ahead of myself though, as at first it was amazing as I spoke to my grandpa and my uncle for the first time in 10 years, and they were so great. I found out that my grandmother had passed away last year, and my mom does not even know. We talked for hours and they agreed to come and help me, and I had to make the phone call from when I was outside pretending to be going to the library or doing some work. My grandpa told me that I should not tell my mom that we've spoken, as they wanted to arrive without her stressing or my dad finding out. They also told me to be careful, and if my dad came home, to get out of the house safely. I felt reassured and was super happy until I got home and my mom was sitting at the table with her old address book in front of her. I tried to deny I had done anything, but she was too angry to listen. She told me that I've ruined her life and it was all my fault that my dad had left, and it should have been me that left, and then everything would be okay. She also said that she had spoken to my dad and that he was sorry and wanted to come home, but he could not because I went to the police and everything was my fault. She told me to get out and never come back, so I did. I went back to the library and called my grandpa, and he told me that we were about an hour away. He told me to stay where I was and they would come and find me. Well, I think the librarian felt sorry for me, as I was obviously upset, and I don't know, they got to me and they gave me a drink and let me sit with the book until Grandpa arrived. I tried so hard to do the right thing, but all I managed to do was ruin my life. Update number 4. Hey guys, I'm not sure whether I would finish as this whole thing has been exhausting to me, and if you have asked me a year ago where would I be, I would never have said to you that I would have been kicked out by my family, cut off from the lives of my mom and sister, and been framed as the bad guy in the story. I've been at rock bottom so many times over the last few months, and I honestly don't really know what I would have done without my grandpa Mark, and my uncle Ben and his family. Let's go back to the day in the library, as the rest will not make sense without that. My grandpa and uncle arrived after I've been sitting there an hour, and I did not recognize them. I only realized it then, when they came over and asked if it was, me, Laura's son. I said I was, and my grandpa pulled me into the tightest hug that I've ever had. I cried whilst he was hugging me, and I felt safe and able to let out all the stress from the past few weeks. My grandpa took me to a dinner, and we sat and talked, and I was able to tell him everything, and he looked so sad. He said that it's killed him inside when my mom had stopped talking to them, and my grandma had died without being able to get their relation back in square. I said I did not know what to do, as my mom had told me to never go back, and all my stuff was at the house. My uncle said not to worry and that they would help me, so it was decided that I would stay at the dinner with my grandpa, and he would go to the house. My uncle is a well-built man, and he said he was not afraid of my dad if he turned up. While my uncle went to speak to my mom, my grandpa phoned the police officer who was dealing with the case and explained who he was and what had happened. The police told my grandpa that as my dad's family was helping him hide, they were struggling to find him. So grandpa told them my uncle was going to the house and would be getting my things. A lot happened that afternoon, and it'll take a novel to explain it in detail, but the short version for you guys is, when my uncle got to the house, my mom would not let him in. She seemed to be hiding something, and she was. My dad was in the house with Alicia. My uncle said he wanted some clothes for me and my things, but my dad heard and came outside to shout at my uncle, which resulted in a fight, and my uncle punching my dad in the face. My mom phoned the police to report my uncle, but in doing so told them my dad was there and he had warrants out for him. So he ended up getting arrested, and I'm glad I wasn't there, as apparently it was ugly. My dad hit a police officer, and so he was also charged with that, and in the end, my dad went to prison. Alicia was divorced by her husband, and they got what they deserved, but for my part, it was not as fair. My mom refused to accept that my dad being arrested was the right thing and vowed to stand by him and told him I was no longer her son. My grandpa invited me to live with him, so I had to relocate to a new city, and at first it was devastating. However, in the end, it turned out that I'm now in a much better place, and my grandpa has shown me a fund that he's been doing in case that we ever came back into his life, and now I can go to university. He said that I will always have a home with him, and I've met my cousins, who are similar in age to me. I've lost a lot, but gained a lot more. I miss my mom, I do. But until she's prepared to see my dad for who he is and what he is, I know I cannot have a relationship with her. My grandpa said not to give up, and in time my sister and mom may came, but for now, I'm happy building a new life with my new family. Top comments from the final update. Comment number 1 says this: I'm so glad that you found closure in your story. I've been following this from the get-go, and I've been praying you would be safe. I'm so glad that you managed to get into a relationship with your grandpa and uncle, and that's something so positive to come from an awful situation, and that should be where your focus is now. I agree with your grandpa when he says that there's nothing you can do to fix the relationship with your mom and sister until your dad loses grip on them. I saw in some other comments that people have described how they knew victims of domestic abuse who were loyal to the people who were hurting them, as they did not know any other way to live, and I think that's what your mom thinks. I read your comment about your sister now knowing nothing about any other life, and I agree with that. I hope that as she gets a bit older, she sees the relationship between your mom and dad is not normal and is toxic, and breaks the cycle of damaging relationships. All I can say is be there when she needs you. Good luck, OP. I wish you the best. Comment number 2. I've read all this. I can't believe that people are saying that you, quote, did the right thing. You got your dad sent to prison. You ruined his life. How will he get a job when he gets out? How will your mom and sister survive without his income? He sounded like he had a good job and was looking after you. I would say, if anything, you're ungrateful and you deserve to be kicked out. You're selfish and did not think about anyone but yourself and your grandpa and uncle, as also in the wrong for enabling you in your bad behavior. Hopefully, when your dad gets out of prison, he'll make sure that you never see your mom and sister again. You're not much of a man if you think that your dad should not be keeping his family in line. That is the job of the head of the family. My dad raised me to always know that a man should be in charge of his family. You'll never go anywhere in life. You're a loser. Me personally, I'm glad OP decides to go live with OP's grandpa. Because, well, first of all, I just simply can't get it past my mind that OP would have to go through such an abusive household, and he came to the rescue of his mother just to be turned away from her after he stood up to protect her. Yeah, maybe OP's mother is being abused and she doesn't really understand it because she's so used to it, but there was video footage. OP's, father was sent to prison. There's no excuse for the way the mother acted, so I am glad that OP is living with his grandpa. Guys, let me know your thoughts about this story. It was pretty sad. It had some ups and downs, some karmas, some retribution, some revenge. It had a lot going on with it. So let me know exactly what you would do in OP's position. My name's Mr. Reddito. Thank you for joining me today. Smash that subscribe button for daily videos. Remember, it's cool to be kind. I'll see you in the next one.